Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Friday, June 20th. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change. This podcast covers your national champions. Another day without Dave Biddle. Thankfully, our last here on the BM5. Our long weekly nightmare is over. You'll get more Dave on Monday. He is actually vacationing at a place you're going to want to hear about. We'll talk about that on Monday. I am going to be up with Jonah Booker here in just a minute. Always great to get Jay Book's view on juicy national stuff and juicy recruiting topics. Today's that day. As you can see from the title, we are in a new era, people. We are in a new era. And I got to let you know about our sponsor for today, Factor Meals. Nothing better than a Factor meal which is revamped the TV dinner vibe in our house, which doesn't exist anymore. 2 minutes, delicious food, 45 weekly menu options. You can pick gourmet meals that fit your summer gains and goals, keep everybody in your house happy. Calorie smart, protein plus, keto, sun up to sundown. They got nutritious breakfasts, on-the-go lunches, premium dinners, guilt-free snacks and desserts. They got you covered all day, every day. Get started at factormeals.com/bucknuts50 off and use code bucknuts50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's code bucknuts50 off at factormeals.com/bucknuts50 off plus free shipping. All right. You know it's a wacky week when it ends with me and Jay Book as Dave continues to tour tropical locations. And wouldn't you know, we have some great stuff to talk about. I always love your opinions on the juicy national stuff and the juicy recruiting stuff, like I mentioned. But first, I want to start off on a positive note. The Glenville pipeline is alive and well. If we take anything for granted around here, it might be the Glenville pipeline in recruiting. I think Sincere Johnson's commitment yesterday was obfuscated, for those of you with a thesaurus and a dictionary, by another recruiting development, which we'll discuss after that. But I was just trying to explain to my wife what the Glenville pipeline was.
Yeah.
It's amazing. When you actually go back and do this and look at all the names and what they've done, we're getting to the point now where we're getting second generation guys on the future skyline here. There's a Whitner coming. There's all Hittners, and it's going to be crazy. Your thoughts on the addition of Sincere Johnson and just an appreciation for the Glenville pipeline, because this podcast will not be totally positive.
I think it's great. Once again, James Laurinaitis landing the top 5 linebacker in the country. Even though he's a Glenville kid, Dan, I think he is someone who really fits Matt Patricia's defense. I know our 24/7 site has him listed as an edge guy. Some people see him as a linebacker, but with his body type, I think he can fit really well into this defense, considering that he has the potential to move down if you want him to in more of a 3-4 type of defense. If you want him to play the linebacker position, he would be considered probably more of a jumbo type of linebacker. But those are the type of linebackers that you saw Matt Patricia use in the New England Patriots type of defense. But it's great to get him in the fold. I think there could be more excitement coming from the Glenville pipeline. I will be surprised if Jameer Perez is not part of this class. 330 defensive tackle, who is your typical one-tech defensive tackle that you really don't see a guy his size north of the Mason-Dixon line. And with him being the Glenville pipeline, that makes it that much better. But Glenville has been incredible to Ohio State. They have been, you can argue, probably the foundation that really took Ohio State to the next level when you start talking about Troy and Teddy and Whitner and all of those guys. But it's fascinating because you're seeing Glenville pumping out quite a bit of defensive talent. Back in the days under Teddy Ginn, you saw a lot of the offensive skill position guys really making the name for themselves. But now we were on the defensive side, but great Great get. Glad to have him in the fold. There were a little bit of talk early on in his recruitment that Alabama may have been a serious player because he has some family located down there, but never doubt that strong ties between Ted Ginn Sr. and the Buckeye program.
I think those ties, like you said, will be enough to sway JJ Perez ultimately. Like you said, I also agree with that. When a guy goes to Florida and commits on the spot,
yeah,
this happened once before with Jerome Baker. I don't know if you remember that, and that almost broke my heart because Jerome might have been my favorite Ohio linebacker ever.
Yeah,
and I remember talking to Bill Kurlick about it, and he was like, "Don't worry,
right,
don't worry."
And the
thing, go ahead.
I was going to say the thing about Perez, he camped at Ohio State recently. And boy, does he have some really good feet for a guy that his size. He can move. I know a lot of places don't have him rated as high, but like I said, you can't teach that type of size at 300 plus, his height, his ability to move, to have those kind of swift dancing bear type of feet. Those are the type of projects, Dan, that in the state of Ohio, you take them without a blink of an eye and say, hey, he may need 1 or 2 years to develop, but down the line, he has the potential to be a heck of a player here.
It's also important to know when you're talking about Perez, and he might not be as well known, much like Arvell Reese, he transferred to Glenville. So sometimes that gets you, I think he's Lutheran West. I'm pretty sure that Arvell came from Euclid, but it takes you a while to get on the radar then. And listen, they're stacked at Glenville. This is not one of the places you roll out as a freshman and get varsity minutes unless you are a superhero. Yeah. All right, let's get to it. Luke Waffle. We had this on yesterday's show. We knew we were getting Sincere Johnson, or at least we hoped, and we're crystal balled heavily. I guess you don't know anything until you get the announcement. But there was a time this week. I've never seen this happen before, actually. So that's how you know it's a new era. We started the Luke Waffle recruitment thinking he was going to go maybe to Ohio State or Penn State because his brother was there. Then USC got involved after the visit because they anteed up. Then Ohio State apparently was back in the mix, and Bill Kurlick rolled a crystal ball towards Columbus. Now, I know crystal balls take a lot of guff on here, and certain people are known for maybe flipping at the last second to keep their batting average high. That ain't Bill Kurlick. He is loath to do that because he's loath to change it. And little did I sent him a text that, so we did the show on Tuesday. We did the show Thursday. I sent him a text Wednesday afternoon when he rolled the crystal ball about, it's going to be a glorious show. By the time the morning came around, the crystal ball had pulled a Yui and headed out west, Horatio Alger style. And Luke Waffle, who, by the way, plays football in New Jersey, so it was not a Cali kid, is now going to USC, and it kind of follows a trend. USC is the number 1 ranked recruiting class. The amount of money that actually gets into the bank accounts of the kids, we'll see, because that's part of it. But in terms of what these kids have been offered and promised, you heard Ryan Day put together, he made the mistake of naming our number last year that became the benchmark for everybody, regardless if people were paying more. I can't even fathom what USC has promised out with the number of recruits and guys they got. And Luke Waffle's part of it. Your thoughts on the entire situation? Yeah. I'm going to give you the floor here for an extended period of time. So where do you place blame? Is there blame to be placed? How big of a deal is it? The Luke Waffle fiasco experience. Yeah. According to J-Book, go.
That's a lot to unpack. But yeah, I think USC's playing with funny money here. I will be highly skeptical that they're going to be able to fulfill the promises of all of these high-profile deals that they're giving out to these kids. As far as the Luke Waffle situation, this is my take on how it unfolded. I believe after the Ohio State visit, he was trending towards Ohio State. You saw a lot of people saying they knocked it out of the park with that visit. He takes the USC visit. I think they gave him a number, and USC they secured a silent commitment from him. We're trending towards announcement day. Ohio State decides to circle back, throw out a very competitive number to persuade him to say, hey, I'm going to Ohio State. That's when you started to see all of the crystal balls starting to go towards the good guys here. USC panics. Why? The question is, why does USC panic? And I think the part of the reason why they panicked was they are also in on Kevin Ford Jr. And we'll touch on him. He's a kid that's headed over here to visit from Duncanville. They canceled his official visit because they secured a commitment from Waffle, and then Ohio State was getting ready to snatch it. So what does USC do? They panic, and they go way above and beyond probably what the market is dictating to get that commitment back. Now you're in a situation to where Ohio State is getting Ford on a visit this weekend out of nowhere. That kind of trickulated out yesterday. So it's kind of a chess move back and forth here. The thing with me is when you look at Luke Waffle, he's a kid that plays private school in New Jersey, not playing necessarily against the best competition as the KJ Ford down there in Duncanville in Texas, who those guys are playing some of the against the best football in the state. I don't know if he's worth $2.6 million over a 2-year deal. That's a whole lot of money considering when you're talking about, the Stewart kid from South Carolina, what he's making there. Like, hey, if I'm going to pay Waffle $2.6 million, I'm going to need damn near double-digit sacks going into that first year. You have to get your money's worth because you're talking about an unproven player. And if you were to pay him that type of money, you're probably paying him more than any defensive lineman on Ohio State's roster. So that's kind of where we're at in today's era, Dan, because online you have a large segment of the fan base who's saying, in order to get these high-profile guys that you're currently targeting and you're consistently going after, you're going to have to give them the bag. That's just the way the nature of the beast is. Ohio State's of the mindset is we're not going to pay an unproven true freshman more than what we're going to pay an actual starter. Coach Lachlan had already told Bobby Carpenter that this week when the Sevion Hyder news came out that he was commanding about $600,000 to $800,000. Their thought process is you come here, you put in the work, we'll take care of you. And you can say, hey, that philosophy works, and it's probably the correct philosophy. Something similar to what Georgia is doing, and Clemson. You see the teams who are throwing the bags out like the USCs, the Miamis, the Texas A&M. They're front loading a lot of these deals because they are extremely desperate before the house settlement kicks in. Now, here's the other part of it. If you're Ohio State, I truly believe that if it comes to the defensive line, I'm okay if they're willing to splurge at that position. And here's the reason. Because once that settlement starts, you're talking about, hey, we can go and get a kid out the portal. The problem is the transfer portal going forward might be more expensive because if you're talking about a difference maker edge rusher that's coming out of the portal, one, you're going to get into a bidding war with every other school. And two, with the new legislation that's going to be in place, let's say Luke Waffle, for example, decides to transfer after year one from USC. If he has verbiage in that contract that if he decides to leave, he's going to owe X amount of money, who has to pay that now? The school that's going to take him on as a transfer. So not only do you have to pay these kids buyout going forward, you're also going to have to guarantee them NIL money. So it's kind of a walking tightrope that Ohio State's trying to figure out. So that's why you see so many teams uber aggressive right now throwing out these monster deals because they know they're going to be able to lock these kids in for a couple of years, because if they want to leave, you're going to have to be able to pay that buyout. So it's a fascinating situation, Dan. And as you mentioned, these are things that we haven't seen before. And if you're talking about Waffle, this 100% looks like a situation where the kid went to the highest bidder. When you start having a guy going back and forth right before signing day, and you start hearing figures that are coming out between 2.2 to 2.6 million dollars, that right there says NIL was the one that ruled this one. But I will say this: if you're Ohio State, take that money that you are going to use for Luke Waffle, and you probably can land Kevin Ford Jr., who many people believe is a better prospect than Luke Waffle, especially in Matt Patricia's defense. And his teammate Landon Barnes from Duncanville is visiting from Texas, another edge rusher. So would you rather have the number 18 and the number 11 edge rusher in the country for the price that it would cost for Luke Waffle? Me personally, give me the Duncanville kids because they're playing against good competition in the state of Texas. You can get two probably for the price of one if you're able to maneuver right. But at the end of the day, you have to have Larry Johnson at minimum get the football inside the 10-yard line when it comes to recruiting, because that's kind of where you're at in the situation. There's a lot of discourse regarding Larry Johnson. Is he holding up his end of the deal when it comes to recruiting? If Larry was able to secure and stack this roster during that 23 to 25 recruiting class period, you wouldn't find yourself in a situation right now to where you have to kind of be overpaying for defensive linemen that probably is not worth it. Because you look at the honest truth with this defensive line, after this year and Jackson's off to the NFL, Caden Curry's going to be a senior, the edge rush is looking very bleak. And that's because Larry has missed on a lot of those recruiting. So that's why a lot of fans, and I understand their frustration, with saying, hey, those 23 to 25 classes, that's when you needed Larry to really recruit lights out before everything went haywire as far as the NIL. And now you're having to pretty much overspend to replenish your depth on that side of the football.
We'll dive deeper on Larry here because I think that's a polarizing topic. And if this is stressing you guys out heading into the weekend, Cornbread Hemp's here for you. America's first ever USDA organic THC gummy. I could send these to J-Book and not get arrested. Back in the day, anyway. That was going to be a funny joke for a few. This is a natural and healthier way to experience a carefree moment. Cornbread's THC gummies offer a balanced sense of happiness and relaxation. Who doesn't need that? No synthetic ingredients, no harsh solvents, 10 milligrams of THC per gummy. And if you're looking for a healthier way to enjoy a carefree moment, you've got to give Cornbread Hemp a try. Here's why. Special offer for Bucknuts Morning 5 listeners. 30% off your first order. cornbreadhemp.com/Bucknuts. Use code Bucknuts for 30% off your first order. Cheers to a healthier happy hour. Okay. I agree with you on the Larry point for the past few years. There's no question about that. But I do not blame Larry for the Luke Waffle situation.
No.
You can't have it both ways. Like, we can't get up here and say it's a money thing and then blame the guy who has – I mean, Larry ain't writing the check. I don't think Larry has control over the purse. So to then blame him for that is a little much. Now, I do understand the 23 through 25 stuff. I do think he gets a little extra guff simply because – and I've said this several times, so it's covered ground, but 10 years, whenever Larry got here, it was about 10 years ago, the exact year. When that happened, he was being recruited against by saying he was too old.
Yeah.
Every single person who used that negative recruiting tactic is no longer at the job they were in, and Larry still is. So that was BS. That was crap. I do agree with you that if you look past this year, it's shaky. But to tell you the truth, I don't think that can be solved any other way than the transfer portal because, dude, there's no guarantee Luke Waffle is going to be a stud as a sophomore.
No.
It's hard to play defensive end at Ohio State. Who was the last defensive end that came in here and was crushing it by their sophomore year? Write those names down. They make as much money as some Caribbean nations now. Those are not regular players. So I get it. We're kind of in a tough spot here.
Yeah.
Where do you see it going? They're going to have to, like the Bo Atkinsons of the world, are going to have to be the raison d'etre.
Yeah. It's a tough situation. And is Larry to blame for a lot of what's going on? Absolutely not, because a lot of these situations are NIL driven. Now, I try to kind of walk that fine line, Dan, because I hear it from both sides all the time. Because you have a certain segment of the fan base will say a lot of people makes excuses for Larry, because you look at Tyler Bowen, the biggest gripe about the offensive line recruiting, people were saying NIL was the issue with Justin Fry. Tyler Bowen comes in year one and he's doing really well with the same
recruiting wise, for sure.
Recruiting wise. Then you also have the situation to where James Laurinaitis, a guy who's fairly young at the position, James is coming in and he's done really well. Same resources. So people are saying, if those two guys can do it, how come is such a struggle with Larry? And I'm just saying that's kind of the talking points that I'm hearing from one side. And I also hear the other side is saying, hey, when you're dealing with the defensive line, the money aspect of it is an integral part in these recruitments. And I 100% agree with that. Just look at Waffle. But they have to be able to find a way. If you got a guy that is really into Ohio State and he's like, hey, if you can even get the numbers within the ballpark of what I've being offered, you got to make that deal. I understand that Ohio State has a principle to saying we do not want to pay unproven high school kids more than the guys that we currently have on a roster who's put in the grind, who's put in the work, who is proven day in and day out, going against the best competition in college football. We don't want to pay these high school kids more than that. And I'm just at the mind frame, Dan, when it comes to the D-line, you probably have to trend towards what the market is dictating. And I know Ohio State has came out and said that when it comes to their analytics and their player evaluation, as far as how they want to pay these guys, they're going to mirror it similar to the NFL. And if that's the case, what does the NFL say? NFL typically says running backs, we don't value as much as other positions. However, on the defensive line, that's considered one of the premier positions that, hey, if you can get a difference maker who's going to be able to create a lot of havoc on your defense, you probably are going to have to pay that person a little bit more. So it's a fine line. So I just think that now you have to be able to walk up to that line and probably cross it, because that's the other area that we're dealing with, Dan. All of these other teams, they're saying, I don't care about what's coming down a pipe with the House settlement. We're going to blow past that stop sign, and I'm daring anybody to try to take us to court, because we don't believe that putting a limitation on what these kids can make is going to stand up in court. Now, when you're talking about Ohio State, I do think Ohio State is going to be positioned extremely well for the new realm of NIL and where it's taking us. But I do believe that they're playing it cautious. They're playing it a little bit safe. That's probably because Ross Bjork has been heavily involved with trying to iron all of this out. So I think Ohio State is being as aggressive as they want to be and not crossing that line like you're seeing a lot of the other programs. So it is more or less a philosophical situation here. But I do think once everything's in place starting July 1st, and if you can actually get most of college football operating within those guidelines that they're laying out, I think Ohio State will be one of the premier spots when it comes to the NIL space going forward.
Keep this in mind, people. I'm gonna do silver lining here. Am I biased? You're GD right. I am. We have the number 2 rated or number 3 after last night recruiting class behind Texas A&M and USC's at the top. I don't think anybody thinks USC or Texas A&M is going to come through on the level that their investment has. I could be wrong. I'm not. Here's the positive I see in all this. The guys that do come to Ohio State now, the elite guys who maybe take a tick less, those are the guys you want. Yeah. Those are the guys who have long-term goals. I don't care what anybody tells me. Ohio State guys, the reason you come to Ohio State is to kick tail in the NFL. Every single guy who comes to Ohio State thinks they're going to the NFL. They're usually right. I get 2 years, $2.6 million for Luke Waffle. That's a ton of dough. But I go back to this. You can't have it both ways. Like I keep saying, if we're going to keep comparing this to the NFL, you got to look at that. Look, both Joey Bosa and Nick Bosa have both already made over $100 million. Subtract 2.3 from 100. Okay?
Yeah.
I get you go to college, you blow your knee out. That's not even true anymore, by the way. You could tear your Achilles your freshman year and still be the first pick in the draft eventually. That doesn't mean what it used to mean. So, look, we've seen salary cap and payment destroy NFL teams. You cannot bring guys into the locker room of elite players and give dudes who've done nothing more money. The reason the rookie scales and basketball and football got redone is because it doesn't work. And another thing, look at the reason the last 2 teams have won the national championship. It's not because of young guys. It's old guys. It's guys you convinced to stay. It's convincing guys who would have been high draft picks to come back. Ohio State had every single guy drafted off the defensive line. All of them could have left. What other team could say that? Curry and Kenyatta Jackson stuck around. What other team has done that? So, and by the way, still basking. Results speak. We're the national champions. So no one else has proven they can do it better than us yet. That's a hypothesis. So I'm not freaking out about this. And look, I did chuckle when you mentioned Luke Waffle's quality of competition because the first time I ever carried a football in a varsity game was at Hunt, and I'm not good. So that cracked me up. We won 29-6, by the way. Anyway,
I agree with the way Ohio State's operating, Dan, because I think that's the way NIL should be. I mean, I think being able to pay your guys on your roster handsomely, I think that's the way to go. Those are the kids who said, "Hey, I want to be a Buckeye. I'm coming here because 1, I want to play for Ryan Day. 2, I want to be developed. And 3, they're going to give me an incredible opportunity to play at the next level." And if you want to add on, playing at a place like Ohio State, there is not a place in America where the stage is this big and the lights are as bright. You just look at the ratings overall from Fox and on down. Ohio State carries the load when it comes to ratings for this conference. So when you get these kids that are coming in unproven, you touched on it. It does something to the locker room because if you bring in Savion Hyder, you give this guy $800,000, which is going to be making more than your entire running back room. What does that do to the guys like James Peoples and the guys who are really putting in the work to saying, "Hey, this kid they haven't done a darn thing. They haven't even went through a winter conditioning workout. Why are they getting more money than guys who are actually putting in the work?" So I totally agree with how Ohio State is operating. And like you said, the teams who are winning are the teams who are able to retain their guys and allow them to mature through the actual program and grow and develop. You have not seen one team win a national championship loaded up with a bunch of younger guys. Until that happens, I'm going to ride on the side of what Georgia's doing, what Ohio State's doing. Clemson got 2 under Dabo. They've kind of taken a step back, but they look like they're going to be a actual legitimate contender this year because they're loaded with NFL guys. I was looking at a mock draft. I think Clemson is up to like double-digit guys who are projected to go into the NFL, and all of those guys are guys that have went through their program that they were able to retain because of their NIL efforts. So I just think that's the way to go going forward. And best of luck to Luke Waffle. But I would tell you what, I don't know if he's that much better than a KJ Ford, a guy who's a little bit more athletic, a little bit more bendy, a guy that probably would fit a Matt Patricia's defense a little bit better, especially if Matt Patricia is going to be running a lot of the 3-4 elements to where you can get a KJ Ford and his teammate Landon Barnes on that same defensive front, creating havoc for probably the price that you would pay for Luke Waffle. I just think you have to be smart about it. But if you got 2 guys that you can really close the deal on, make it happen. If you're Ohio State, if it say, hey, I need to go up an extra $100K, an extra 200, just so that we can make sure we're securing difference makers, you got to be able to be a little bit more aggressive in that respect.
Can you guys hear that old school landline we have in there? I've never once I've never once answered that in my house. We've had it for like 10 years. That's definitely someone calling to get me to vote somewhere. We have it in there because my wife thinks the phone looks good. I don't know. But I digress, and I'll tell you this. Here's a name for you that I'm interested in, is Jake Cruel. Go watch his video. We're competing, I'm told, with Florida and Oklahoma for him. It's a Florida kid who moved down to, I think he's at IMG. You want to see a pass rusher. I am all over it. We're going to be fine. That's kind of the silver lining here of all this. It's definitely, look, I'm not going to get up here and say I didn't want Luke Waffle. That's disingenuous. It used to be on here. We'd get on here and immediately after a guy committed, we'd go, he's not that good. He's overrated. Not going to say that. I think he's a stud. And he's proven, and he comes from a family of studs. Say again?
I say he's a heck of a prospect.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the type of battles. You're right there in it. And I'm cautiously optimistic, Dan, because if the reports are true that Ohio State was that aggressive with Waffle when it comes to the NFL, NIL, that tells me that they're willing to play ball. Now, they may not go full-blown Texas A&M type of just blowing out offers and stuff, but it tells me that they were still aggressive. And if they're willing to be that aggressive from now until signing day to make sure that they secure some defensive linemen, that tells me that, hey, they're going to be right there. And it's a big weekend. This weekend, a lot of official visitors on campus and some heavy hitters. That's for sure.
Definitely want to get on the site now and check out what Bill has coming for you. There's names like Braylon Womack, our guy Ford, who we need to put a good show on because I'm hearing Texas A&M is in love as well. Carter Meadows is a guy from DC, Gonzaga, who I really like. I am a sucker for the 6'5", backup power forward on a nationally ranked basketball team with Division I basketball offers. You can also be a defensive end. So very into that. Hold on a second. D. Sanchez bringing it. Listen, a parent asked me how to get an offer. I said, go to the camp and show out. She said, what about NIL? I said, get an offer first. Geesh. But I go back to this and listen, I'm not paid by the Sanchez's, so everyone can know that. But I continue to use Devin as the example. Devin Sanchez could have gone to any college on earth that has a football team and gotten whatever he wanted. You don't think he's going to benefit from coming to Ohio State and getting to play against J.J. Smith and Carnell Tate and guys like that every day? Who thinks Devin Sanchez is going to win in the end here? This guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are the guys we need to focus on. The guys who come from great families who have long-term vision for their kids. And look, more power to Luke Waffle. The Hun school tuition, maybe they're using that because it's pricey. I'm telling you, it's from the mean streets of Princeton, New Jersey. That is expensive real estate. But the sky is not falling. All right, let's wrap this up with this. The past week or the past few weeks, we have seen an unreal collection of quarterbacks come work out at Ohio State. You want to talk about other programs being jealous of something? How about having the number one rated quarterback and number one rated receiver in basically every class come through and speak glowingly about the program? Who jumps out to you? There's literally a cavalcade of dudes, and Brady Edmonds was the commitment. But they had some other guys here who were really impressive. Elijah Haven, the kid from Louisiana. You want to talk about what an NFL football player looks like as a younger kid? Man, he passes the look test. He's got something about him. So who jumps out to you? Or are you in love with any of them?
Yeah, we'll keep it quick. But that's the guy. That's the one. Elijah Haven, 6'5" guy. I know they love the current commit that they have at the quarterback position, Edmonds. But anytime you can get Haven up there to be able to throw in front of you, that right there is a pretty big deal. But they've had a plethora of talent coming up. And the one thing that's been awesome, you've been seeing a lot of kids from the South coming up and actually visiting Ohio State, getting on campus. And when you're the national champion, that's a luxury that you get. Not a lot of kids from the SEC footprint is willing to come up and camp at a Big Ten school. And at Ohio State, they've had a ton of them. So that's the one guy that really stands out to me is Haven. I'm sure that all the SEC schools are going to be going after him, but having him throwing next to one of your top commits, that right there kind of gives you a perspective. But the camps, they've been loaded. It's incredible that we're already heading into July and they're pretty much done with the camps. I think they got some 7-on-7 stuff that they'll be having coming up. But the individual camps, they wrapped it up. Jameer Brown, to me, Dan, before we get out of here, he's like your next version of your Teddy Ginn, a guy who 100-meter champion, anchor leg in one of the relays that won the state champion in the state of Ohio. He is going to be running in the low 10s by the time he gets to Ohio State. Seeing him coming literally from the state championship in track right over to Ohio State and campus and just absolutely burning past other defensive backs. That right there is the one that stood out to me that says they got him one. They got him a next Ted Ginn type of difference maker when it comes to high-end track speed.
So I'm a sucker for Jameer Brown. He is a fine Gem City native. And Wayne may not be Glenville, but it's close. Wayne has produced a ton of great players. And I can tell you, Jameer Brown is already thicker than Ted Ginn was. He is not he's not a track guy playing football. He's actually, I think, a football guy who runs track. And what I love about him most is, and I was a bad track guy, and I don't know if anyone knows this, the guys who are the fastest in track, they don't run their fastest every time. They save themselves a little bit. He didn't even win the region in the 100 around here. Some other guys beat him. They got to the state finals, and he's like, semis, W, final, W. And everyone around him who thought they had a shot got on his hip and were like, no. And that is, there's nothing more depressing than seeing someone run away from you like him. Absolute stud and number one receiver in the class, who, by the way, we're pretty good at attracting those guys. I want to mention one more thing before we go, because someone just said something about this to me. I don't mind paying Jeremiah Smith, okay? And guess who doesn't mind paying Jeremiah Smith? Everybody else in the locker room. There are certain guys you can pay that much because they walk in and they are better than everyone else day one. Have you ever heard quotes about a freshman like they said about Jeremiah? No offense to Luke Waffle. He's not the Jeremiah Smith of the offense. If that guy comes along, you'll know. Like, what was it? Jadeveon Clowney, if we go back in the day. Okay. If Jadeveon Clowney walked into the locker room of a bunch of older dudes, they'll be like, hey, you can have my locker. You know, so in that case, I think we're okay.
Yep.
So I don't want
And
people
we'll
to get it twisted.
and I would say we'll finish with this. Ohio State wasn't even the biggest offer for JJ. He said that numerous times. The Florida schools, Florida State, Miami, were actually paying more than what his initial offers were to Ohio State. His thing was he wanted to go compete for national championships and be developed by Brian Hartline. So he was willing to accept less because he knew in the long run, if he can get developed like he thought, then there's going to be more money at the end once he's a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. So far, it looks like JJ's right.
The great guys who come to play football at Ohio State get paid a ton of money. Yep. Caleb Downs, all you're going to hear about this year is, can you really pick a safety in the top 5? There's not even going to be discussion of him. It's going to be a philosophical discussion. That's how good he is. So, yep, Oracle, he's on it. Yeah, there you go. See, it's just a qualifying race, and you get everyone's get psyched up, and then you run right by him. All right, 40 minutes, all right. 56 seconds. Jay Book's out of here. He's got to go to work, West Coast time. He'll be back with Dave next week. Appreciate you guys stopping by. Have a good one. Nutters of Buck.